I mentioned before, quality of life analysis to evaluate your view of the treatment and the side effects. This cartoon shows randomization, so you have 10 individuals that are eligible. Randomization randomly assigns 5 of those patients to the control group of standard therapy, and the other 5 patients randomly are assigned to the investigational group. So that is all done by computer, and particularly you can imagine when there's, 100 to thousands of patients participating. Randomized trials are used infrequently, but they are used when no standard treatment exists, when the standard treatment would be observation or supportive care, as were some of the very early trials that were done with the new drugs in kidney cancer, as well as if we're trying to determine if a higher dose is more effective than the standard dose. So in this case, patients would be given the standard dose treatment for a certain period of time, and then if medically appropriate, they would then be randomized to get a higher dose or the standard dose. Patients are always told if a study or clinical trial involves a placebo treatment. That is a critical part of the informed consent in order for you to make an informed decision, as well as if a crossover is allowed. If there is a randomized study, it will tell you in the informed consent whether crossover is allowed or not. So looking at the Sorafenib phase 3 clinical trial, what you see is there were some eligibility criteria as defined on the left. Patients were then randomized to Sorafenib at the standard dose or placebo. Initially, there was no crossover allowed, but following review of data with the FDA that demonstrated that Sorafenib was superior to placebo, which was the standard of care in second-line kidney cancer at the time, patients were unblinded and allowed to cross over and receive Sorafenib. So that does happen at times in clinical trials. Temsirolimus was FDA approved on a phase 3 study that looked at 3 different treatment arms, as you see to the right. The standard treatment, which would be the interferon by itself, the treatment with Temsirolimus by itself, and then a third question was asked, and that is, does a lower dose of Temsirolimus plus a lower dose of interferon, is that as effective as the others, or which of these 3 might be most effective? And you can see also that there are some specific eligibility criteria listed on the left, but I'm not going to go into them at this point. Pazopanib was approved based on a phase 3 study. Patients were stratified. In other words, part of the randomization formula involved whether or not patients had a prior nephrectomy or had they had prior treatment. And in this case, it was a 2-to-1 randomization for patients. So 2 patients received Pazopanib for every 1 patient that received placebo. And so you can see that 435 patients participated in the study. The 2-to-1 randomization randomized 290 patients to Pazopanib, and 145 patients were randomized to placebo. And this study had a planned open-label crossover at the time that the patients in the placebo group developed progressive disease. They were unblinded and allowed to cross over to Pazopanib if they had not already been receiving it. So this just gives you a little bit of a feel for some of the designs that can be used. One very important part of clinical trial is patient protection and ethical conduct, making sure that clinical trials are conducted in an ethical manner and that your rights and safety are protected through the informed consent document, which can be very detailed and cumbersome and can be anywhere from 5 to 25 pages depending on the treatment or treatments included. There's a review and approval of the clinical trial by 2 review panels prior to its opening to enrollment, as well as ongoing monitoring of the study. And you can see here that I've listed the National Cancer Institute website there is definitely more information available on a variety of websites that will help provide you with information about participating in clinical trials. Part of the review and approval of a clinical trial is first a scientific review panel. It can be referred to as a clinical trial scientific review committee or a protocol review and monitoring committee. And it consists of healthcare professionals and patient advocates to look both at the scientific merit and the appropriateness of the clinical trial. And there's also an IRB, or an institutional review board, which is that group of individuals who review and protect the participant, ensuring that the risks of participation are reasonable and that the informed consent document has sufficient and appropriate information so that you as a patient can make an informed decision regarding your treatment options. And that's an ongoing process, and that document is reviewed, and you will find that it gets a stamp of approval and is updated as new information is available. There is an ongoing monitoring process. There is an annual review that is done once a year, reviewing a summary of the findings, the risks and benefits over the past year, ensuring that it is still appropriate to continue the study. Anytime the treatment plan is changed, new side effect information is available, there are changes in the risks or benefits or changes in the schedule or tests, revised informed consent documents are created. They again go through the IRB review process, and then you are asked and given an opportunity to review the new updated information. And it's important to realize that informed consent is an ongoing process. You may very well hear about and be informed verbally of new information as soon as the investigator knows about it or the physician knows about it, where subsequently then the informed consent will be revised and you will have a chance to review it and sign it and continue your choice to participate or choose to withdraw consent and not participate. So that kind of covers the multi-step process of the informed consent. The treatment options are presented to you by a physician, whether it includes a clinical trial or simply what are the options for the FDA-approved therapies. If a clinical trial is offered for your consideration, you'll be given a copy of the informed consent. You'll be instructed to take it home. You'll have an opportunity to read and reread it. There's a lot of detailed information. I always encourage my patients to highlight sections, circle things they don't understand, write questions in the margins, bring it back. That is a working tool for you to sort through the decision process with your family members. You'll have a subsequent opportunity to ask questions of the nurse and the physician, as well as an ongoing opportunity at every appointment visit and in between if you need to make phone calls to your research nurse or physician. It's an ongoing opportunity to ask questions, to be reassured that the potential benefits outweigh the potential risks in your situation. And it's real important that you understand you have the right to withdraw consent at any time without fear of change or quality of your health care. So just to give you some ways to look for clinical trials, I copied here the kidney cancer website. So the Kidney Cancer Association on their homepage, as you can see by the big bright red arrow, has a clinical trial search option. So you can search there. You can search on the National Cancer Institute website. You can find a clinical trial. You can see what's available information-wise about previous clinical trials, as well as information you should have if you're considering participating in a clinical trial. And there is a third group called CenterWatch that also has the opportunity to post ongoing clinical trials that you can consider. And there are definitely other ones as well. Now, as far as clinical trials currently ongoing in kidney cancer, for the sake of time, I'm just going to cover these very briefly. New information is always changing, so we continue to try to get rid of cancer, get rid of kidney cancer, and updates in clinical trials happens very quickly. And so what is given today is old news tomorrow. So there is a phase 2 trial that's been ongoing of Tivozanib, or AV951 versus placebo. This is a European study at this point, and there is a phase 3 trial that's in the process of development. So again, there are specific criteria for the current study. It has demonstrated acceptable effectiveness and safety, and so Aveo Pharmaceuticals is moving forward with this agent. This is the phase 3 adjuvant trials I mentioned earlier. What you'll see is there are acronyms, such as the ASSURE trial, which is the adjuvant Sorafenib or Sunitinib for unfavorable renal cell carcinoma. There's the SOURCE trial, which compares Sorafenib to placebo in patients who have had surgery and are at high or intermediate risk of relapse, as defined by that particular protocol. And then the STRAC trial, Sunitinib treatment for renal adjuvant cancer. So again, they create some acronyms to help with these. So data on these will be forthcoming as the enrollment completes and trial data is available for review. High-dose interleukin-2, they continue to work the information on response to high-dose IL-2. This is a trial that's been conducted by the Cytokine Working Group to really try to better define what patients are more likely to respond to high-dose IL-2. And so some of the results are presented here, and then subsequently this data has again been presented. Sunitinib in papillary renal cell carcinoma, there's a phase 2 study that has been ongoing, looking both at the progression-free survival, how long do patients benefit from treatment, and again, much of this is average and early on. What the overall survival in this particular small group of 23 patients was, and it just underscores that we need to continue to develop more effective therapies for patients with papillary RCC, and these studies are ongoing. New studies are coming along. Additional studies include a product called IMCL or M-clones product, ramucirumab, in patients with previously treated VEGF inhibitor therapy. So this was a multi-center study that various institutions participated in, involving 40 patients who had metastatic kidney cancer and had had prior treatment with one of the VEGF inhibitors, and it was well tolerated and has clinical activity, and this data is maturing, and we'll hear more about this in the future months. There are also other drugs here now looking at combinations, vorinostat and bevacizumab. This trial is ongoing, and additional data will be forthcoming. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. There are many more clinical trials that I could go over. It's very difficult to keep up with them. The Kidney Cancer Association has some excellent resources on its website that can help provide you with news briefs as new information becomes available. But the options for kidney cancer patients continue to expand. We're on the horizon of novel therapies to support the therapies we already have. And again, I appreciate your time, and if you have any additional questions, please feel free to submit them to Carrie, and we'll be happy to take questions as many as we can, as many as time allows. Thank you so very much for your time.